What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Triangle Talk. Today, I am very, very excited as we've got an awesome creator who's got a new ash can coming out here soon. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring him in, let him introduce the book himself, and talk about the universe he's trying to create.
Hey everyone, this is Josh Adams. Currently working with a partner of mine named Daniel Evans. We've been working actually for about a decade now, putting this story together. So it's finally at the point where it's going to release. But the first book is called Apollyon 20XX, and it will be the introduction to what we're calling the Godfather Universe. And we will be publishing through Legacy Comics, which is a pretty new independent startup. So we're super excited. Thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to kind of explaining what we're up to and just talking about it. So
Yes,
we're
sir.
excited.
Absolutely. We're so happy that you reached out to us and definitely glad to have you here because, man, anytime we get a chance to help someone who's got a new book or just even talk to someone, it's awesome. So, is this your first book like ever as far as comics go?
Yeah, this will be the first time that I've had anything published. Now, and I say that with I'm kind of cheating that a little bit.
All right.
Um, before we signed a contract with Legacy to release our stuff, I did the artwork for a one shot called
Okay.
Sarita that is also going to be coming out this summer.
Okay.
I didn't write any of that. It was an already written script. I just did the art for it. So that's actually I did that first, but it's coming out around the same time. So it's kind of cheating, but
Okay. That's
yeah, this
awesome.
is I've loved comics for a long time. I've loved to write for a long time. I've loved art for a long time. But this is the first time that I've actually done anything in professionally in the field. So
Okay.
it's an exciting moment.
Obviously, I can you can definitely seem excited. I got to watch a couple of your live feeds and everything, so it's like it's good when somebody's so excited to bring something. I think that generally does good on the product end as well. You see it in the book and the product that you're getting. So you want to talk about some of the influences for the book itself? I think I remember, and like a couple of animes were a bit of an inspiration for this.
Yeah. Daniel Evans and I are both heavily influenced by anime. Uh, a lot of it, not as much, not necessarily on the visuals, although Apollyon 20XX is going to be a black and white book. So
Okay,
it does have sort of a manga flavor to it that we were going for. But more so in the sense that Japanese storytelling is different.
okay,
And, they are a lot more patient and there's a lot of world building and lore behind a lot of the Japanese animations and mangas and things. So from that standpoint, we're heavily influenced by the manga anime. I grew up on classic Marvel DC like just about everybody else.
right.
I see your Action Comics poster in the background.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like both Dan and I we grew up, we're 80s kids. So, 80s comics, 90s comics. And then also, if you're anything like me, comics, you can find them at the gas station. You might can find them at Walmart. Sometimes but more often than not, we didn't have the comic book shop. It was you go to a yard sale or you go to a antique store with your parents or something, and you'd
Mhm.
find one of those long boxes,
Yeah.
and you just start digging through, and you'd find some Batman book from the 70s, or you'd find some Spider-Man book from the 60s and take it home, and that was that's where we started with
Right.
comics,
Okay.
and we love those the the thing that I think that makes those stories work so well is back then the characters were so well developed that you cared about them. And a lot of times that stuff has been lost in recent years because comics now, at least especially from the big two, so much of that is just event. It's
Yeah.
one event after another, crossover after crossover, crisis after crisis. world shatter. It's just constantly an event game. I don't
Right.
know how much of that has to do with the movies affecting comics. I don't know, but we wanted to go back when we decided we wanted to do this. We wanted to go back to that idea of telling a good story
Hmm.
with characters that felt like real people, that you could find something in that book to connect to, because so much of what I pick up off of a stand anymore is just hard to connect to.
Right.
So I'd say that's kind of our biggest influences, would at least on the comic end, would be Japanese influences, and then those classic ones that we grew up on, and then literature has because Dan and I are both big readers, so books like Dune that has
Okay.
such a huge scope and scale to them. These series like sci-fi and fantasy series that might be 9, 10, 11, 12 books long, they told bigger stories than just this one little piece of the world. And so when we set out to do is create a world, not just a comic or an individual story, but an absolute universe of stories.
Okay. Okay. So do you have like a total amount of books and characters already planned out for this, or
All right, so
uh,
this might take a minute, but
that's okay. That's
like I
okay.
said, Dan and I have been working on this for right at a decade now.
Okay.
So we have the book that's coming out first would be Apollyon, and if that sells well, hopefully the pre-orders sell well, we can put out the first volume of Apollyon in the spring is the hope and the plan. And that's the entry into the world.
Okay.
But our stories, the Godfather Universe, spans thousands of years.
Oh,
So
okay.
we have these different eras that are planned out to where, if you're, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but you know how Star Wars always had had your Knights of the Old Republic, and then you had the prequels with the Clone Wars, and then you had
Right.
that Skywalker era, and then you had the new stuff, and now the High Republic and all this. And each of those eras feels kind of unique, but has those narrative through lines that connect them all. That's
Right.
kind of what we're wanting to do out the gate. So
Okay.
we have Apollyon 20XX that's set sort of pretty much at the beginning of that timeline.
Okay.
And then in the summer, we're hoping to release, or in the fall of next year, we're hoping to release a book called Kolga, which is set in an era kind of thousands of years after the events of Apollyon. We have a book series, which we've written the first novel, and we've already outlined the next three. We've got 100 issues of Kolga written.
Oh
We
wow.
have, yeah, we've been working
That's
hard.
awesome.
Yeah. We have scripts for 100 issues of Kolga.
Okay.
We have 25 or 30 scripts for Apollyon 20XX ready to go. We've got Dan is a part of a music group, so he has their band is recording sort of like concept album EPs that
Okay.
will gradually release, in between some of this stuff.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to really give people this expansive thing with so much scope, but we also want it to be like you can go into any of these eras, whether it's the main books or whether it's these spinoffs that we have playing, like graphic novels, spinoffs.
Mhm.
You should be able to enjoy that story by itself, and then, but if you want to see how it connects to a bigger story, that's there too. So they'll
Okay.
stand alone, but they'll also have the same DNA, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, totally makes sense. That's wow. Okay. So when you say you've been doing this for a decade, y'all have a really, really big thing coming. That's
With
actually super cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of work. And I think the reason why is because some people would ask, why do all that work for so long and not release any of it? Our thing is we don't ever want to have to retcon anything. We don't ever want to have to reboot it. We don't ever want to have to, 20 years from now realize, oh man, there's this huge plot hole that we didn't even anticipate. Now we got to fix it. We wanted all of that lore, all of that background to be, even if it doesn't make it into any of the books, the answers are there so that if anybody asks, we can give them those answers. We wanted it all to be figured out, planned out, and thoroughly developed before we start asking people to give us money for it.
Right. Okay.
Because, when you think about independent stuff, especially, ones like us that are in these little smaller startups, and we're asking you to, on good faith to invest in this dream that we have. So much of the time, what you get is, maybe you help fund issue one of something, and then it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, and you still don't have the book because they gave you some art, but they never actually finished it. So you're waiting on them to finish that one issue, and then you might not get issue two for another 4 years.
Yeah.
And you're just waiting, So one of the things that I've said, in other interviews is, look, I promise you this: if we ask you to pre-order something, like if we reach the point where we put something on sale, it will be finished before we ask you to buy it.
Okay.
And you can also rest assured that when you buy a volume 1, volume 2 will already have been written.
Okay.
Like, we know where the story's going, we know where it ends, and it's not going to do one of those things where we just run out of ideas and then it peters up, because we formed so much of that before we started actually trying to get it published.
Okay. So, so are you doing the art for the book as well?
I'm doing the art for Apollyon 20XX, and I'm doing the art right now, working on that and working on the Kolga series. And the story stuff, Dan writes the scripts, but all of the story and lore and world stuff we've developed together, back and forth, tossing the potato,
Right.
for years now. So the creative side of it we've shared, and then it's when it comes time to do the actual scripting and all that stuff, he does that, I do the art.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Do you have any other inspirations for the books outside of like some of your animes and your big sagas like Star Wars or Star Trek and stuff like that might peek into some of these as they come out?
Well, one of the things that you'll see is, as we hopefully get to the point where we can start introducing some of these different eras to people, is that there's different genres that we play in. So, when we get to Kolga, there's a lot more of a Lovecraftian horror element in the background of that. There's a lot more of that steampunk influence in the visuals to that book, where Apollyon 20XX has a lot more sci-fi and, more like a traditional superhero team feel to it once we get into the first volume.
Okay.
And then there's other things that are a lot more esoteric and, psychological. And so, like, we love so many different things. So, we'll have some things that have a very, fantasy Game of Thrones type influence, whereas something else may be a lot more horror and, frightening and dark.
Right.
So, all of those different things come into play. In Apollyon, the biggest thing I think people are going to see, or I hope that people are going to see, is that it's reflecting a lot of our concerns and fears about what's happening in our actual world right now.
Right.
And it's very much a response to some seismic shifts that we're seeing in culture and in our society today that, that we find alarming, and, and kind of want to address those things through, the lens of a story, because I think that stories are powerful in that way.
No, I totally agree. I think a lot of stories over the years have been snapshots of what's going on maybe in the world or that person's life, and they really just seem to draw inspiration from it. So it definitely makes sense that would be something that you would include, I'm sure, in a lot of these universes, even if you do it in a future or a past context. So I totally agree.
Well, that's one of the things that, it doesn't matter if it's set in the present day or if it's set 2,000 years from now. As much as I love Star Trek, one of the things that I always kind of, and I get that Star Trek was supposed to be hopeful. It's all about being hopeful for the future and this utopian thing. But there's always that part of me, as much as I love Star Trek, that says, humanity doesn't change. You know,
Yeah, I can
people
definitely understand that.
people are still going to be greedy. People are still going to be human. Unless they're not human in the future, we're going to still see human flaws and the consequences of that stuff. Power always hates a vacuum. You know, you're always going to see somebody trying to manipulate, trying to antagonize, trying to control somebody else. I mean,
Right.
it's human nature.
Totally agree. So I guess another question I got for you is: do you have a specific comic or maybe a movie or something that was, had that light bulb go off that you knew you wanted to write and create your own kind of world?
Well, I've spoken about this in some other places. One of the big ones for me is Akira.
Okay.
Both the film, the animated film, and the actual comic version of the story. Because Akira, not only is it this incredibly visually compelling story, but it deals so much with the way that the nation for Japan, how they dealt with what happened at the end of World War II with the dropping of those bombs, those generations that grew up in kind of in the shadow of that. Japan began, and they really had to start over. Like the bombs were a hard reset for their culture, for their society. They had to build a new Japan.
Yeah.
So like they grew up, the kids that grew up after that those generations grew up with a completely different Japan than their grandparents did. And it's that idea of apocalyptic type events, because for all intents and purposes, Japan during the 40s, that was an apocalypse for them.
Yeah.
That was like the end of the world for them, and then they had to start over. They had to build a new one. And we wanted to show what happens when the whole world gets a reset like that.
Okay.
And that's something that carries on throughout all of the different parts of our universe, is that the element that starts it, the big bang that starts it all, is a Paulian 20x axis. Everything that happens in that timeline that creates this event, that it's essentially a god is made by man. Man creates a god that they can't control, and in doing that, they just completely destroy the world.
Okay.
And it's all about rebuilding the world. And how would a god rebuild the world he broke? Because he's not really a god, he's a human who's transcended.
Okay.
So he's like, he has the powers of a god. He has the ability for his will to be made into reality, but he still has all the human flaws that we have. So, it's this again and again and again, this cycle of basically a false god trying to find a way to keep the world back together again that he destroyed. And there's so many manipulations that happen, and then you've got people who realize, this small subset of people who realize that what we're being told isn't true, and what people are worshiping isn't really what they think it is, and they get labeled a god foe. And so we call it the Godfather Universe, because we follow in the lives of these people who reject the narrative that they're being given. And because of that, they find themselves fugitives, and they're labeled a God foe, which is like a terrorist. They are outsiders of society because
Okay.
they don't accept what they're being told.
Okay. Now that looking at some of the images and hearing that definitely makes everything really come together. So
Good.
I'm excited to read that. I definitely can't wait for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're hoping for it to be high concept, but not so high concept that people can't engage with it.
Hmm.
And we're trying to make the characters, most of the characters, at least in Apollyon 20XX, most of the characters are young people who are just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they're caught up in all this stuff. And so hopefully they make good audience surrogates,
Hmm.
to see the world through somebody's eyes that we can relate to.
Hmm.
So we do deal with some big questions and big ideas, but there's also a lot of good action. There's some, we try to strike a balance to where it's a smart story, but it's not scholarly, if that makes sense. It's still
No, it
action
makes
packed.
sense.
It's still fun to read, um, but hopefully it also gets people thinking.
Right, and like you said, it's going to still be fairly grounded, which will give people something to relate to as well. Which I think
Mhm.
that'll be something that really brings audiences in as well while they're reading the whole universe, like you said.
Mhm.
So, like you said, so Apollyon's coming out. I know on pre-order soon. Crunge, you said.
Pre-order is live right now, actually. So like
Okay.
we are we're doing pretty well. We've been on the pre-orders for the site has been live for a week and a half as
Okay.
of right now, and so far we're doing well. We certainly need a lot more people to buy it. If
Hmm.
we can go ahead and pre-sell like even half of that run, it can pay for the rest,
Right.
and we can go ahead and get it in people's hands, and we can also go ahead and start trying to have some book signings and things where we can actually interact with people
Hmm.
one-on-one, and
Totally.
have that physical book in front of them. One of the cool things that we are excited about is that not only when you pre-order this book, not only are you getting the ash can, but you're also going to receive a song download that's
Okay.
from the Blue Bolt band,
Nice.
that ties into some of the themes of the Godfather universe. You will receive the first 10 pages of the full Apollyon Volume 1, which ultimately is going to be around 150 or so pages.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be coming out in the fall. I mean, in the spring. We're going to go ahead and give you the first 10 pages of that unscripted, just the art, but to kind of tease these characters and this action that you're going to get. Uh, so you're not just getting the ash can, you're getting a real taste of the world, and that's stuff that's exclusive only to the people who pre-order this.
Gotcha. Okay, that's super cool. I'm just. It's very rare that you get to see someone who decides to include music into this, and I'm a huge music person. I'm sure, like you are, obviously. Um, I guess that would kind of brings a question up. Like, do you listen to music while you guys write and do the art, or
I do constantly. If I'm in here drawing, if I'm in my space and I'm drawing, I've always got music going.
okay,
Um, I don't know. I can't speak for Dan. I know that he writes a lot of music. He and we actually met through music because we've never been in a band together, but we've both been in and out of bands
okay,
in the same like kind of stratosphere as each other. So that's how we met and found out we had all these common interests. So music's a very important thing to us, and it's a great way of telling stories.
hmm,
So we just what better way to help put flesh on the bones of this idea than to have a whole different medium to tell the story in.
right, totally
So
agree.
we're pretty excited, and their style of music, to give people an idea, there's sort of a mixture of there's a punk rock aspect to their music, but they're also very very progressive.
Okay,
So it's like a punk rock, a more of a punky version of what Rush is. It's
okay,
like a mixture of Rush and and like traditional punk. So it's really cool music. I think
yeah.
everybody's
I was
gonna
gonna
love
say
it.
you're speaking to my soul with all this stuff. That's stuff I
Yeah,
love listening to.
yeah,
So
we're very excited for people to hear the music, to read the books. We've got so many short stories and just supplemental stuff that like once we get the ball rolling, once we start building a platform and building a fan base, we want to be constantly sending you stuff. Like
right,
we want it to feel like getting an update email from us is like the best part of your month. Like we want you to be excited when you see that email that's come because you're on that mailing list. We want you to be excited to see that email because you're going to see some kind of really good piece of work in progress art, or you're going to get a short story, or you're going to get a song, or you're going to get an episode of a podcast. Like
okay,
something interesting to expand the world, maybe a lore video, whatever it is, so that you're getting actual content you know, while you're waiting for that next big piece of things. But it all starts with, we got to sell this ash can. We got to prove that, you know, that we're capable, you know, that,
Right.
and we got to hook people in to where they want more.
Right. Gotcha. Is there maybe a process you can explain where like maybe you decided to go with legacy versus maybe doing like a Kickstarter campaign to
All
get
right.
your universe going?
Yeah. All right. So Legacy Comics, for people who don't know, Legacy Comics is run by awesome guy named Patrick Hickey Jr. He is a incredible writer. He's been a journalist for a very long time, award-winning journalist. He's
Oh
written
wow.
books for Yale and other places, Harvard, I believe.
Oh wow.
He's written a series of books, The Minds Behind the Games, that dig into like the history behind different video games. And he started Legacy as a way to publish his own comic book series, which is called Condry. And he had a really good success with that, with those first 3 issues. And so now with Legacy, he's released issue 4 of Condry. I met him. I collaborate on a comic book podcast with called the Loot Bros Comic Cast, and
Okay.
we interviewed Patrick to talk about Condry, and you know, just organically hit it off with the guy because he's just a really cool guy.
Hmm.
Uh, Hardest working dude you have ever seen in your life. Just dynamic, funny guy, consummate New Yorker.
Oh
So I'm
boy.
a South Carolina boy, and he is a Brooklyn boy. But
Okay.
we clicked really well. So after the show, we kept talking, and he wanted to see some of my artwork, which I sent him some. And then he's like, "Well, would you be interested in doing art for this one shot?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to do that." He loved how that turned out. And it was sort of like he wanted to see whether I would deliver and hit deadlines and things like
Hmm.
that, and whether, and you know, that was sort of like testing the waters for whether Daniel and I could bring our stuff into the stable there at Legacy. So that it kind of just came about really organically, because before that we were considering, do we want to do a Kickstarter? Do we, you know, we were in that process of trying to figure out what to do, and he just came at the right time, and it was a good fit for all of us. So we're
Okay.
excited to work with him. And Legacy, it has some really cool books out right now, and some cool stuff coming out right now as well.
Yeah.
That, you know, it just is. We're happy to just be a part of what they've got coming out, because they
Okay.
got some really cool titles.
Yeah, I agree. We kind of browsed the site after we first spoke, last week and
Hmm.
everything, and Condre was one that looked very interesting, as well as starts with an R. And I apologize.
Renfield,
Yes,
yeah,
that one looks so good.
Renfield is a basically a prequel to Dracula. They were
Oh,
able
okay.
to get it. They got permission and like actual collaboration through the estate of
Oh, okay.
Bram Stoker, however you say his name. And so it's a license, like officially endorsed by the family, uh, prequel to, or kind of side story to Dracula that follows the Renfield character. It's got some
Okay.
really cool art by a guy named Steve Kang, or Kange. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he's a real. I haven't met him in person. I've just kind of talked to him through Messenger.
Yeah.
Um, Condry is more of a gritty crime drama. It's a really cool story. They've also got a book that just started called The Job, which is a heist type story like the movie Heat,
Okay.
but the main character robs banks by day and is a pro wrestler by night. So
Okay.
basically, he robs banks to support his pro wrestling
Okay.
career, which is such a cool,
Yeah,
interesting
that's so
concept.
cool.
It's a really cool book. Uh, we got another book that Legacy's just published, is the uh, first installment of, called Legend of the Night Owl, set there in New York, about sort of a vigilante character. So I mean, there's some really cool stuff in the
Yeah.
stable. Uh, we're hoping to make a big splash. We're hoping to be something different, and eventually really build a platform that people can come back to us, and when they see that Legacy logo in the corner of a book, they know, I'm getting good art, I'm getting a good story, and I'm getting something that people actually cared about.
Definitely, I will say that compared to maybe some other newer writers that we've seen, the fact that you've got a decade's worth of material is probably more than most people come prepared with. So I hope that the Ashcan does well so that this can keep going, because just in hearing all this, I'm basically, I just want it all now. Of course, that's me being selfish, but I definitely would love to read it all now, and I can't wait to get a hold of Apollyon just to read it and everything.
It's funny, you say that. It's funny because, like, Patrick, we love working with Patrick, and Patrick really does love working with us. But the one thing that Patrick gets excited, he gets really aggravated with Dan and me, because we want to give everybody everything
Yeah,
right away, and he's like, "No, slow down, slow down." We're like, "What if we give him everything?" And he's like, "No, you can't, you can't." So, like, we're that dog that doesn't know how to walk on a leash. We're just
yeah,
at the end of the leash. We
that's
want,
awesome.
we just want to we want to just flood and drown everybody in content. And he's
That's
like,
so,
"No, you can't. You gotta slow. You gotta back up."
oh man, that's so cool. Oh man, I'm so lost here. I'm trying to think of just where what else to ask, because I've I've obviously, with everything you, I feel like I could ask and you've got an answer. But so I guess after Apollyon, can you at least give an idea of where the next place, like in the timeline, history
Oh
wise,
yeah,
like we're going from
absolutely,
20XX
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
like the year 3000, or
All
like,
right. So to give you, that's a good question. That's something nobody's asked yet. So that's a cool idea. I'm gonna have to be careful because I don't want to give spoilers.
no,
But
no. If you just want to give an
so
era, I'm cool with that.
all right. So we have Apollyon 20XX, again, very close to our, like, it's in the 2000s, like it's near future for us.
Okay.
All right. That book is all about the story that leads up to basically an apocalypse where a new god is created.
Okay.
All right. The next thing after that, we have in the chronologically, not necessarily release date wise, but
Mhm.
chronologically on the timeline, which on our, we're working on a website which will have the timeline and show you where everything fits. That way, nobody's ever confused about when is this happening. Where we want everybody to be able, we want it to be as accessible and clear as possible for everyone. So that timeline we're going to have on there, but you'll have a story called The War of Angels, which would be a graphic novel
Okay.
eventually, followed by what we call The Time of the Great Kings. And then after those two stories, chronologically, we arrive at what we call the Biophile Initiative era. And that's the Biophile is where we're going to spend a lot of time.
Okay.
Essentially, what you've got there, that's very steampunk ish as far as the vibe that it has.
Hmm.
Um, and essentially, what you've got is a group of people who are very smart people who become aware of the corruption that's happening in the behind the scenes of all the major power in the world. And they decide, when they find out that these people are trying to control us, they're trying to control our minds. They're literally trying to infiltrate our minds and force us to do what they want us to do, force us to think what they want us to think. And when they do, they create the Biophile Initiative as sort of an underground movement to first remove yourself from their influence as much as possible.
Okay.
And then they're actively working in secret, to build a group of people that know the truth. They're trying to spread is propaganda
Okay.
to get people to understand what's really going on. And the rallying cry that they use, sort of their motto, I guess, is "kill your thoughts," because they're not really yours. You can't
Okay.
trust them. And the biophiles are all about, they want to leave this earth. They realize that things are heading in a direction that's not going to get better. These people are going to end up destroying everything. So they're just trying to leave.
Okay.
And the book, the like release wise, the thing that's coming after Apollyon is going to be Biophile Kolga. She is the last person that was a member of that organization. Everybody else has left the earth. She's left behind. So the story of Bifal Kolga will be about somebody who grew up with her father, and there's others that she looked up at as father figures who were leading this initiative. They're gone, and she's left behind, and she's angry, and she's hurting, and she is dealing with the consequences of what came before her. So that book has a lot more horror elements to it. It's really fun story because we balance the darkness with some light-hearted stuff too. I think we've got a very, very strong, really two really strong female leads in that book that we are really excited. We really believe those are characters that are going to connect with people. So that kind of gives you an idea of not just of what's coming after this Ash Can. We got, ideally we're going to release a volume of Apollyon and then a volume of Kolga, and kind of back and forth between those two. And gradually, if we're able to either free me up more time, or if hopefully bring in some other artists, that we can add to the stable. If we can get some other artists, we're going to start trying to fill in some of those smaller stories as graphic novels or limited series and things like that. The content's there, the stories exist. It's a matter of being patient and just building that trust, building that platform, finding the right people to get it to and to get involved in it.
Right. All right. So that, I guess that kind of answered another question I had. So obviously you're going to have some people leave the planet. Do any of your stories that you have planned so far take place off Earth, or is it all pretty much contained on Earth at this point?
Most of the stories are going to take place on our Earth. Now there is a spinoff that's going to follow the people that leave. That would be way off in the future at some point, but we do have a story fleshed out that would follow those people. And what's interesting is that I mentioned the name Blue Bolt, for that's the name of the band. Blue Bolt is also a character, and she is a character that eventually she's going to spend a certain amount of time away from the planet, and then she will return at some point, and that's all I can say about that. So there are some like space sci-fi elements. I don't want people to get the anticipation up, though, that's the type of story we're telling. As much as I love those stories, it's very grounded to our planet. Like it's a very
No, that's totally fair. So was there a reason that y'all decided to use Blue Bolt as a character name? Is it just one of those it was too good to pass up kind of deals?
It just was. Honestly, that started with the band. That's actually the where it all began. Was he started a band? He said, "Man, it'd be cool to call it Blue Bolt and it could be like this mecha anime thing." That's literally how it started. And then he came to me because he knew I drew, because he had seen stuff like posters and stuff. We'd done shows together and stuff. He's like, "Man, can you draw some pictures of what this Blue Bolt character might look like for T-shirts and stuff?" I said, "Yeah, let's draw that." And then, like, gradually it turned into he was wanting to write some short stories behind their first little album that came out. And, that story ended up being kind of cool. So he's like, "Can you do some art for that?" And I did. And then all of a sudden we started tossing, well, what about this? Or what if this happened? Or what if this? And it just grew and grew and grew. It just like snowballed into the Godfather Universe.
Sweet.
So, it's just an interesting. It didn't start like most things normally start, but it definitely just opened up the door of creativity for us. And it's just been this fun back and forth ever since. I mean, I talk to him just about every day.
Okay, cool. So you're a little bit like me and Jay, where it's we talk about something and throw ideas around all the time. So
that's cool. We toss that football back and forth constantly.
All right, so I've got a little kind of off the wall question for you. You can have one soft drink for the rest of your life. What are you drinking?
I drink Diet Coke a lot, but I'll be honest, I am a huge coffee drinker.
Okay.
I drink coffee like constantly. If you cut me, coffee comes out.
Okay. Well, if it helps me, it's if you can see this on camera, that's my I gotta wake up thing.
Oh, you got the high test over
Yeah.
there, the unleaded.
Yeah. I try to wake up and I drink one every day. It's how I get going.
I can't
Just for
remember. I can't remember who it was. One of the comedians was talking about having early, like an early morning news, gonna have a long day. He's like, so he took like he bought some of the 5 hour energies. He's
okay.
like, I got a long day. He said, if I drink 2 of these 5 hour energies, that should be the same thing as 10 hours of energy. He said, it turns out if you drink 2 5 hour energies, you don't get 10 hours of energy. You just get a 10-hour panic attack.
Oh Lord, that's the last thing I need because what I do for a living, I work for a maritime transportation and security company, so it's long shifts, and I don't need 10 hours worth of panic attack because Lord knows some of what we deal with will already do that for me.
I can't even imagine.
So, but it's fun. I do enjoy it. Is there anything else that you want to add in about the story or anything?
I think I've said about as much as I'm allowed to say at this point.
Okay.
The biggest thing I can say is like if it is, at all sounds interesting to you, and I know you guys are going to show some of the artwork here at the end.
Yes,
Like if
sir.
it looks like something that you're interested in, buy the ash can. Go ahead and pre-order it. The sooner you get it pre-ordered, the sooner we're able to get it in your hands. We're taking great pains to make sure that everything we ship gets shipped in really good condition, as good a condition as we can possibly send it in. I know a lot of people send it to you in an envelope and it's all folded up by the time you get it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We want to get it to you so you can really, have something worth holding on to.
Mhm.
So pre-order the book. Follow us. We have a Godfo group on Facebook. You just look up Godfather Universe. We have a group there. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Follow us. You'll constantly be getting updated. We're going to try to get anybody that pre-orders. We're going to get you on a mailing list so that we can, send you updates and send you content, even if it's just a work in progress of the penciled in part of a page. We're going to try to constantly keep you involved in what we're doing.
Okay.
And check out also the other legacy books. Legacy's coming for you.
Yeah.
We are coming for you. We have some really cool titles in the stable.
Yeah. We'll definitely try to put a lot of that down in the description below to Legacy, to the pre-order page, to the Godfo Facebook group and everything. Now, you mentioned that y'all are on most of the social medias. Can you tell us where we can find you specifically?
Me specifically. Let me look because I just changed it the other day.
No problem.
Yeah, my you'll have, if you look at josh.adams.godfocomics, that's
Okay.
my Instagram handle.
Okay.
And then for Twitter, for the wicked Twitter, if you look up Godfather Universe on Twitter, that's the main
Okay.
that's the main one that we're sending everything through for Godfo stuff on Twitter.
Okay. And then of course the group on Facebook there
Yeah,
for
just look up Godfo Universe. We got over 200 people in that group already, and seem to really be kind of following everything we got going on. So
Okay.
we're just excited to engage with people. I can't wait for you to see the book. I can't wait for you to read it.
Yes.
I'm just, we're so excited to see how people respond to it. Another thing, and I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the things we're hoping to do is in time, we want to be able to create a forum to where if you write something fan fiction in our world and send it to us, as long as it like fits certain criteria, we'll make it canon.
Okay, that's awesome.
Which is something that like you're not going to see anybody else do that, as far as I know.
Oh, that's actually really cool.
But that's something now that's sometime off in the future. We gotta get through one thing at a time. But eventually, we'd love it to if you created an original character and wrote a story about it, and that character may show up in something.
Okay,
Or I
that's
might
totally
draw
cool.
you might get artwork from me of that character, and they're part of the world if as long as it fits with what we've already established and what we know is coming. We want to eventually make it something that people can not just engage in, but also interact in.
Okay, that's totally awesome. That's definitely something unique that I think will really, really entice a lot of fans because I'm sure as you read some of your favorite stuff and you're like, man, I've got an idea for a story, and so now people can actually do that and hopefully maybe sometimes be included. So that's actually really, really cool. Well, all right, man. Josh, man, it has been so awesome having you on here. This Ashcan sounds amazing. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I know all of us here, Jenna and Jay, we're excited to read it, and we appreciate that we got the chance to talk to you and everything. And thank you so much for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. And hey, whenever the book comes out or whenever the first volume of Apollyon comes out, if y'all want to do a review or if we
Mhm.
want to just have a sit down about it, just get back in
Absolutely.
touch. I
Yeah.
know that whenever this goes live, we will share it on all of our stuff. Just kind of get you guys exposure, get us exposure. It's a team effort.
Yeah, no, that's all. That's everything comics is you got to help everybody so that we can just create more for this world that we all love so much.
Yeah,
Well, all right, everyone.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Again, thank you, Josh, for coming on, and we will see you guys on the next one. Have a good one, everyone.